Ron Gallo is in many ways a musical chameleon. You just can't put one definitive label on anything he creates, and that's what makes his music so novel. Constantly inventing, he continues to amaze us with each and every release, and he's here with me today. Ron, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll just jump right in. Rumor has it you have a new record coming out soon. Is that right?
Coming out to be determined, but it's definitely being worked on.
Okay.
It's pretty much it's all consuming right now, and I'm pretty excited, but you just never know when it's actually going to see the light of day. So
Right. Okay. Can you speak to it at all in terms of what we can expect from it?
I've been all over the place for a few years, sort of lost, but I feel like I've definitely gotten back to my roots and original mission statement with this record. When I made the first record, Heavy Meta, I was living in
Right.
Philly, in Fishtown, and I was just pretty pissed off and frustrated with everything, humanity at large. And 5 years later, I think I've come full circle. So I'm very much back into a similar headspace for obvious reasons. I'm living a block away from where I used to live.
Wow.
And I feel like this record is going to be sort of a continuation of why I started this project after a few years of experimentation and just kind of like trying out a bunch of different stuff. I'm back, baby.
So you're referencing
Or
your
worse.
you're referencing your original mission statement, which is
Well, when I made that first record, I just didn't really see the point in making music for music's sake. I just was
Okay.
I was kind of, or just for my own vanity, kind of. I feel like there's enough great music in the world. People make there's too much music in the world actually. So when I started, I kind of said like there needs to be a bigger contribution for me, and so the music is, you know, originally was just mere vehicle for the message and just sort of addressing a lot of the issues that I just have with the world. And me kind of trying to work through what can be done about them and just trying to confront it all rather than just, sing about my personal experience, which is not relevant to the shared experience. So
Okay.
now I'm kind of more focused on making a record in 2022. Why should that matter to anyone or everyone? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to talk about, I guess, what's really going on, and that's the only way I can justify it. So
okay. Can we expect maybe a similar tone to your first record?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I've been sort of like danced around stylistically just to kind of entertain myself and just challenge myself a bit. But
Yeah.
I think there's certain things that are just more natural, certain sounds that I kind of evoke, and sometimes you get that right from the beginning, I think. So yeah, getting back to all of it, I think.
That's cool. And just quoting from your bio here, your only constant is that there is none. And I think that perfectly sums it up. You've also spoken recently, I think it was in another interview in like September of last year, about the diversity of your releases, how we're kind of all constantly fluctuating. You tend to create material that represents wherever you are at a given time. Does that come naturally to you, or do you feel pressure to constantly reinvent yourself maybe?
No, I think it's less reinvention than just keeping up with where I'm currently at.
Okay.
So it makes it easier for me than trying to invent something. It's kind of like, okay, where am I at? What am I into? What's going on? Create from there. Usually it changes. So by the next one, different headspace, create from there. And then that's just how you kind of keep it going, I guess.
Right. How does that like translate, I guess like auditorily? Like how do you translate like your feelings into, what instrument you choose or how you mix them together?
Well, the only example I can really think of is with the last record, Piecemeal. We all kind of became homebodies for
Yeah.
a year or so, or the greater part of a year. So I think sonically, I was just listening to a lot of stuff that was calming, that you can put on when you're in your kitchen or in your living room, and you're just kind of, And I think sonically, it sort of reflected that.
Yeah.
There's jazzier chords. There's sort of like mellower tones and sounds. With a record like this or the first one, there's definitely some chaos, and I think that it's necessary, kind of intensity. And that's kind of where I'm back to, and I think the sounds are going to reflect intensity. So.
Awesome. Really excited for that. And just to go back to Piecemeal real quick, you re-recorded All the Punks Are Domesticated in 2020. What made you want to return to that specific song?
So That was on the first record, which
Right.
came out in 17. I wrote the song in 2015.
Mm.
And the idea was sort of my foreshadowing of what like a very dystopian future would be if we kind of kept with this very oblivious, complacent kind of society where we're just kind of drifting along, no one's paying attention. And a lot of that stuff I feel like came true over the last year and a half. And so there was like a moment at the beginning of the pandemic where I was at home and I finally started playing through songs, and I played that one and I had a moment where every line was this is happening right now.
Yeah.
And so that was where it started. I was like, maybe I should inject new life into this song now that it's probably more relevant. And then I wrote an extra verse for 2020 and then put it on the record. And that's really the reason why, is because it made more sense now than it did then.
That's cool. And I think stylistically too, it even fits in with Piecemeal. So was that a decision that you made specifically, like you wanted to kind of make it fit in with the rest of the record, or were a lot of the songs not written yet?
Yeah, I kind of did want it to fit within the I guess the vibe of the record.
Okay.
Make it a little jazzier. You know, there's some saxophone in it.
Yeah.
You know, just to create that cohesive thing, because even though the message is a little bit more challenging, I figured if you can make it not sound like that, maybe it could be more effective. So
Yeah. And then also on the topic of Piecemeal, you've referred to WUNDAY Crazy After Dark as an introverted anthem of sorts. Would you consider yourself to be more introverted?
as of late, yeah. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I don't know. I've definitely changed a lot over the last few years, especially when I started touring really heavily. Just, you know, like you're all over the world, you're constantly on the go, you're always around people, you're always running on like 10.
Yeah.
And I think the introversion really started when I would get home from tours and be like, I don't want to see anyone. I've had enough of social gatherings, conversations, and people for, you know, a lifetime over the last month on the road or whatever. But I feel like I'm kind of getting back. I'm like, I miss people and things like we all do now. So I'm like an introverted extrovert probably at this point.
Okay, cool. And I was actually going to ask if any introvertedness might make it difficult to perform. So is that the case, or is it just like, you know, you're kind of spent after a tour?
Yeah, I mean, I get pretty spent, but as far as playing live, for me, that's the most free place on the world to me. I'm never, you know, sometimes like I've gotten nerves in like when we toured late last year, just because it had been such a long time. But once we kind of got into the groove of it, I just very quickly remembered, like, I feel like that's where I belong. It's, you know, it's a place where you feel like you can really be yourself and you're not afraid of anything. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you're definitely kind of used to touring at this point. Do you have like a ritual of sorts that makes it feel more comfortable or makes it that freeing experience for you?
I don't really have any pre-show rituals. Rituals that happen during the show is always trying to have things that are off the cuff or improv to keep it fresh, I guess. So sometimes during the show, there's a lot of bits and things that happen that only happen once. And I guess that's sort of a ritual within the show. Yeah.
I can imagine it gets kind of exhausting doing the same thing every time.
Yeah, I feel like it becomes a little robotic.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of faking it or you're turning it on, and I hate that shit because people can tell, kind of gets away from the point, I think. So I just think it's important to try to find any way to make yourself feel uncomfortable, to like rattle that, you know, here we are again, same set, like playing, you know.
Yeah, and like you just mentioned, last year, like many musicians, you toured for the first time, and I think it was like 2 years, right?
Yeah, the last show that I played pre-pandemic was January 25th, 2020. So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, a year and a half.
Yeah. I mean, as a concert goer, just speaking from, you know, my own experience, the first few shows back were just surreal. It was really crazy because, like, having not been to a show in a long time, almost 2 years, I think, or a year and a half, I think is about right. There really just isn't anything like live music, you know. So as a performer, was it a particularly emotional experience for you as well?
It was. I mean, there was moments where it just felt very cathartic, like all the pent up energy from the last couple of years just kind of getting out. And there was a lot of weird shows on that tour just because we're still, you know, especially in September, we were, you know, peak of Delta and just it was very strange, but there were some shows that resembled like a real deal show that we remember from the past life. And that was, yeah, unlike anything. It's the best. It's the absolute best. And I hope we can get back to it. I mean, before all of this, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the crowd during shows,
Oh,
and they're
cool.
kind of blurring the lines between stage and audience. And we didn't really get to do that on the past tours, but I just kind of, I'm excited for the day where we can just, there's no wall again.
Absolutely. And that was a tour in support of Piecemeal for the most part, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty, yeah, technically.
All right. And there were, on Piecemeal, it was less of a, I guess, conventional rock and roll record. And so did that make it more difficult to adapt your music for the stage?
For sure. Yeah. Because I always had the mentality that if a song can't work with one guitar, bass, drums, and voice, then it needs to be a better song. And then with Piecemeal, it's like there's all of this stuff going on. Some songs don't even have guitar in it. So adapting them, what I kind of did was not really think about the record at all. Like adapt them with the previous mindset of live. And I think it probably works 50% of the time, which was, it was a pretty experimental tour in that way. But, especially with this next record, I'm like, okay, get back to the simplicity, what works well.
I imagine there's probably a lot of coordination going on with trying to adapt the record.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you feel like you're trying too hard, and then you just get to a point where you're like, just forget what it sounds like, because these are two different mediums. No one comes to a show and is like, oh man, I really missed the synth line that happens at 1 minute and 45 seconds. Nobody says that. Yeah. It's like an energy exchange. So just bare bones, play the song, and it should be fine.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to look at it. And it's funny. I was rewatching the live stream you did for Amazon way back, before the record came out, and it was, just you and your guitar, and you're performing some singles from the album that was going to come out, and it just, obviously the lyrics were the same, the chords were the same, whatever, but it just sounded very different. It was almost like a whole new song, and I'm sure that was probably a similar mentality with taking it to the stage.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't really think about how it is on the record. Cool. It's too, I don't know, it's too much.
Do you ever consider doing a fully acoustic album, maybe of just like re-recording songs you've written?
I've actually thought about that a lot over the last couple of years.
Cool.
I just think it would be really cool to really strip it down. And I did my very, very first solo record, which doesn't exist anymore anywhere, but it was mostly that, like acoustic guitar and voice with little bits of production. So I would like to go there again, but I don't know when.
Just out of curiosity, why doesn't it exist anymore?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes you look back on things and you don't like them as much as when you put them out. And you're kind of, when I put out Heavy Meta, it was just I want to start with a clean slate.
Right.
And I feel like there was a very focused sort of idea behind it. And, it's hard to like explore new stuff, I think, when people are attached to like some old ideas. So I was just like, I'm going to clean the slate, get rid of all the old stuff so that it can just start fresh. So.
Yeah. Does that ever make it hard to create something that just sits for a while? Like when it comes time to release it, in many ways you've kind of already moved on from that sonically. So do you ever have to force yourself to just let something be as it is?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the whole game, I feel like, because, if you're working with labels, especially, things get so dragged out and you don't have a lot of control over timing. So that's especially why with this next record, I think lyrically, sonically, it's trying to create things that you're not ever going to not believe in terms of the content and the message, which, I feel like exists on that first record. It's less of like, I really feel strongly about this right now, but I might feel differently in a year. It's like make music and with messages and words that pretty much forever you'll never not agree with.
Yeah.
That can kind of help with, well, recorded this record a year ago and it's coming out a year after that, but I'm not tired of it because I still believe what I'm saying. So
that's cool. And then, yeah, of course, you wrote the songs even earlier, and just putting them together and
that's the dream. Get to a place where you can write a song, record it, and have it out the week later. That's the dream.
And how do you first of all, how do you decide when something is done, and then how do you decide what goes together, what fits with what eventually makes it to the, 10 or 12, whatever track album?
So my process with that is usually when I write something, even if I demo it in this very room here, it's not real to me until I play with other humans.
Okay.
So that's like phase one is write, demo myself, play with people. Then it becomes a real song, in my opinion. And then you kind of get the structure. And then there's the recording process where I feel like it goes from, this sort of idea to like a fully polished thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider something finished when I can listen to it and I don't cringe.
Okay.
That's when something is done. So sometimes it's not even about adding stuff, sometimes it's about taking stuff out. Things will never end if you don't kind of set that mark. Like, okay, I listened to the whole thing and nothing bothers me. It's done. So.
Yeah, and then on the topic of songwriting, I guess in just general creativity too, do you find it best to create in a completely unconstrained environment, or do you have to make rules for yourself to complete something?
I think it does take a little bit of structure.
Yeah.
Especially recently. I used to be able to just pretty effortlessly sit down for like 4 minutes and a song would come out start to finish and I wouldn't think about it. Sometimes that happens, but I don't know. Now I think it's a little bit more kind of intentional. Like I come up here, try to treat it as a job because there's just so much time on my hands right now where I'm like, okay, it's time to go up, maybe put something on to kind of like get your brain going.
Yeah.
Take some influence from, I guess. Look out the window. Be like, okay, what's going on? What are you thinking about? What are you angry about? What are you anxious about right now? Mm-hmm. And then kind of go from there. But there's not much more guidelines beyond that. It's just kind of throwing things at the screen, I guess, and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And you just mentioned influence. I saw you recently wrote a short piece in that, I think it was the Impulse Records Zion about John Coltrane.
Yes.
I know that jazz is a big inspiration of yours among all other kinds of music, of course. But how does that come about in your music? Is, jazz influence or just other influence?
I mean, I'm not like a qualified jazz musician or musician in general. So actual musically, there are elements, there's like certain sections of songs, especially live, that, explore quote unquote jazz. But I think for me, it's really just the improvisation of things, especially live. And that's kind of what I take from it. Because like, I just feel not informed or qualified enough to actually become like a jazz boy.
Yeah.
There's just like a freedom to it. And I like, it's kind of connected to what we were saying earlier, just keeping shows in the moment. So,
yeah. Who are some other musicians that you look up to? John Coltrane's a legend.
Yeah, of course. People that, I guess people that have stuck with me for years and years and years, the people I usually go back to, like there's a huge picture of Iggy Pop hanging on the wall behind my computer screen. That's always one. MF Doom also hanging on the wall over there. Jeff Buckley, Velvet Underground, Jonathan Richman. A lot of like the predecessors to punk. I mean, I feel like that's a time period and music scene I really resonate with. Tyler, the Creator. A lot of weirdos, a lot of people that kind of carve out their own little universe and have a very strange worldview, or people I'm usually drawn to.
It's a really wide spread. So.
Yeah, it's not really about genre. I mean, I love all genres, but there's certain characters of, like I'm drawn to certain kinds of artists and people, I think, that I really resonate with. And they're usually kind of like left of center, not really like anything else.
Yeah. So what's that general worldview that you look up to and maybe try to replicate in your own music?
I mean, it's really just a sense of freedom and authenticity, I guess. Like people that are just very unapologetically themselves.
Yeah.
Don't really care about what's happening. They just kind of do their thing and they get really good at doing their thing. And that's just something that I kind of aspire to, because to me, it's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, you only get to be you. That's a good enough thing. So you might as well just be whatever that is. So like what you like, create what feels genuine. You only get to see through your eyes. So speak from that perspective. And then you kind of have your own world. So like, I just, feel like I'm drawn to people that just do that because it's the most honest thing, I think.
Definitely. And that actually kind of reminds me, you have your own brand, really nice, which is kind of your, platform for, well, not promoting that worldview, that sort of authenticity, but, I think it displays some of it really well. The website is mostly just like a multi-purpose creative outlet from what I understand, right?
Yeah, just to kind of, sometimes when you're under your name and like you're the, it's like your face, it's like it's almost easier to be more yourself when you disguise it behind something.
Okay.
Or like there's a character. And so I think Really Nice was kind of a way for me to separate and not overthink and just like throw shit out there without thinking about it too much.
Yeah.
I feel like it ends up being the more spontaneous, genuine kind of things that I'm thinking or into at the time.
That's cool. And with its purpose being so broad, how do you determine what goes on there?
Well, it being broad doesn't help with keeping up with it because it's been like a couple of months since I've really, like I started it with, there was like a handful of regular segments that I would write. And then, I don't know, they just kind of fizzle out and then new ones pop up. So there's not really a consistency. So periods of time go by where I kind of neglect it. But one of the things I like as far as like the clothing aspect of it is that it applies to that as well. So I can get an idea for a shirt right now, and then 5 minutes later it could be on sale, and I like that. But yeah, I should probably get some more structure behind it. Probably need some help. I don't know.
Yeah, initially, wasn't there like a series during that sort of quarantine period of just like, I think it was live streams, right? Friends of yours and...
Yeah, it was Really Nice Fest. It might have been one of the first, like the digital festivals, because we got like really, really ahead of the live stream situation, but kind of just by necessity, because March 13th, 2020, we were supposed to play a festival in Columbus, Ohio. And this is like the day where everything took the turn. Yeah. So I like flew the band in, we got together, put together the set. The festival got canceled. And so, but everybody was there. So it's like by necessity, I was like, we can't waste this. What can we do? Let's go buy some gear. Let's do a live stream on Instagram. So March 14th, we did a live stream. And really nobody had live streamed yet as far as pandemic live streams go. And so the festival was kind of like a natural way to kind of keep that going. And then it's like maybe 9 weeks or something. And then it kind of fizzled out because people just got burnt on watching shit on Instagram, which makes sense. So.
That's a good point. Do you see something like that ever returning? Like, I know that internet radio is still a really big thing.
I don't know. I'm kind of just more focused on what can happen in the real world eventually, because there's just, with what I do especially, there's just something missing without the real human connection. Experimenting with it, it just doesn't feel the same. Like I hate playing into a camera in a room by myself. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's a little sad, I think.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is. I mean, from what we know, so I would love to eventually turn it into a real life festival when the timing is right, but I don't know when.
That's awesome. And I mean, you're totally right. In a live setting, it's way easier to, adapt to the audience, feed off their energy, more or less. So I can totally understand that.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. It's the whole point.
Right.
So.
And I mean, that kind of begs the question, are you planning on doing maybe a tour in 2022, or at least playing live, right, at some point?
Yeah, we definitely will. Right now, it's kind of all going to be based around this next record, because touring through this period and mid-pandemic has been kind of eye-opening as well, about just a lot of perspective. Because touring was hard before the pandemic. Now it's much more difficult with less reward. So it kind of makes you really think about how should we be doing this in the future. And so it's hard to say. We did a 5-week tour in September. I think that was the last one of that kind. I foresee, coming and playing the important cities, maybe, a week or two at a time. Maybe there's a lot more things happening outdoors. So I hope to do some of that stuff in 22, hopefully when the weather gets nice. But I know it's just hard to know the future of touring, I guess.
Yeah. And just going back to that tour that you just did at the end of last year, if you were to tour again this year, what's something that you would change or that you would hope would be different?
Well, I guess being comfortable in the scenario that we all remember before this would be the number one choice.
Yeah.
Being that may or may not happen, no one really knows.
Yeah.
I would like to see things adapt to more outdoor, normal shows, but outside might be a good step. Something that feels like a way to adapt to it, where we don't have to wait for the pandemic to end, which it may or may not. It's more like a good adaptation. Like we're outside, everyone feels comfortable. The show goes on the way that we remember it. And so if we can't have choice one, that would be choice two, I guess.
Cool. Okay. Do you prefer outdoor shows to indoor shows? Because I know they're just so different,
I do. I mean, especially when it's nice out. Why do we need to be in this dark, disgusting club?
Yeah.
At midnight. Why are we not outside? It's 75 and sunny, 5 p.m. I don't know. It seems more, especially after all of this.
Oh, yeah.
What people need. A lot of people hate on South by Southwest. I love that festival because it's like the breaking of the weather, beginning of spring, Austin. It's exciting. More of that. I mean, you play like 15 shows, but there are, Austin has it figured out where there's an outdoor version of every venue. Like, we should just be doing that.
For sure. And why does it seem to be like a prerequisite that like a concert venue has to be just gross inside?
Right? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of really nice venues that are popping up and have developed over the last few years, but there's some that have been hanging on for 10, 20, 30 years that just have not changed. And you're like, why are we subjecting ourselves to this? This no longer makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. It's just even during the pandemic, after learning lessons, quote unquote, it's the same. The bathrooms are still awful. The soap dispensers are empty and there's no paper towels, or the sink doesn't work. It's just, some things will never change. And maybe they should. Maybe they should just level the building and build a stage outside.
No, it gives it character, right? When it's gross, it gives it character.
And now that's such like a tired way of looking at things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this desperate grasp for authenticity, I think, with, it's like dive bar. What's cool about hanging out in shitty places? I don't know if I get it anymore. And maybe at some point that I did, but now, all the perspective.
Yeah.
Why?
It's the aesthetic, I guess. I don't know.
Or the apathy, the carelessness is so cool, man. Yeah, well, look where it gets us.
Right. Right. And actually, this is funny. Speaking of weird places, you posted on your story, I think it was last week, you'd be writing 2 books, one that's paper, one entirely of Google reviews. And first of all, those reviews are fantastic. But were you serious about the book, the paper version of the book?
Yes.
Okay.
I am. So kind of parallel with this record, there's going to be a book, my first, in the works as well.
Awesome.
It's not going to be a conventional book like a novel or a memoir, because who cares? And who has the attention span for it? But I think the structure is going to be kind of all over the place, like a collection of all different kinds of styles of writing, lots of really short stuff. And then one thing I want to do is have segments where there's Instagram posts and there's tweets and there's these familiar social media visuals, but printed on paper. So then people read it, they're on paper looking at the template of like an Instagram post, and that's part of the book as well.
That's cool.
So yeah, I don't know when it's going to be done. Maybe I'm 65% into it. And so we shall see. But it's been actually really helpful too with music, because getting out of the comfort zone and focusing on something else helps.
That'll be really cool. That's, something different. Because I feel like, and this isn't super often, but we were just talking about like zines, and I have like bought a couple, record releases before that have an accompanying zine with just like artwork and obviously the lyrics. But do you see it as mostly artwork, or is there going to be like more, I guess, prose as well?
Yeah, I think it's going to be mostly words.
Okay.
There's going to be journal entries. There's going to be, I'm calling like ADHD fiction. So they're really, really, really short stories.
Okay.
Yeah, and then kind of messing with like the short, almost caption-like styles of writing. But it's gonna be word-based. There might be some sketches and stuff, and it's gonna be about the words for sure.
Awesome. Now, about those Google reviews, what makes you want to write those? Like, is it your specific experience at one place, or do you just like see something with particularly low ratings and be like, all right, I'm gonna jump in on that?
So it was a couple weeks ago when we were visiting Chiara's family in Italy, and we were just sitting around a lot in the house, and I don't even know where the idea came from. I was just like, let me think of evil businesses or corporations and go on their Google page, and I'll just write these really, really absurd reviews. Just they're fictional. They're just kind of, but there was something about doing that felt really freeing to me. For some reason, it's self-entertainment, to be honest, but just have a lot of fun. So if I go to a place and the people are total assholes or have a bad experience, maybe I'll just go and write something completely absurd, or like take my stab at Amazon and Whole Foods by just writing completely ridiculous, or the Philadelphia Parking Authority, which is the most evil organization that's ever existed.
Right.
It's not going to make a difference, but it's just fun for me. So I think those will be in the book as well, just printed versions.
Yeah. I wonder if someone's hair has ever actually fallen off in one piece.
It did in the review.
That's funny. And okay, this is interesting. So you're a Philly artist. Last year in December or November, whatever it was, I talked to Dylan Baldy of Cloud Nothings, who's also a Philly-based artist, and he was saying that usually when they play shows in Philly, the audience is just like very judgmental. They just kind of stand there. They're not, even when they play songs that people typically really enjoy, there's like no reaction. Have you had that experience before?
I consider myself lucky because, I'm Philly area born and raised.
Yeah.
So I came up here, I started playing here. And so I was able to kind of develop, in the scene here, and that helps you kind of be embraced and accepted by it. For outsiders, though, I would tell people just to skip it, because the thing I love about Philly that I think people probably struggle with, it's a very no bullshit town. No one's trying to sugarcoat or please anyone. So you really get a very straight kind of, I guess it's judgment. I guess that's the word for it. You're out on the street, people are just going to tell you like it is, and it's not going to be, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares what you think about them. There's a hat that I see a lot of people wearing. It's like, it's a Philly hat. It's like, no one likes us and we don't care. And that's the perfect attitude of Philadelphia. Which I think stems from Philly just being kind of a rough, dirty, gritty city, which makes for kind of a cool, very real attitude, but also it's kind of, there's like a darkness to it, I think, too. So when people go to a show, they're confrontational maybe a little bit more than, oh my God, music, I love live music. It's like an accessory to drinking, because it's just like drinking. I just think life is not, like rainbows and sunshine in Philadelphia. So people are just trying to like go hard and forget about things, I think.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's so much different than playing just about everywhere else. People are less hesitant to show excitement or joy in other places. But I don't know. It's coming up in the environment. It's like good training, I guess.
Yeah. It kind of prepares you for the worst almost. Well, I don't know about the worst, but
Yeah, I mean, it sets the bar pretty low.
Yeah.
You can have good time at a Philly show, then you're going to be pretty surprised anywhere else, I think. So.
Yeah, I do drive up to Philly once in a while to see a show if like I can't make it, when someone comes to DC or Baltimore or something like that. And
where do you go? Where do you like to go?
Well, so I've been to Underground Arts a couple times, Union Transfer, and I went to, First Unitarian Church is my favorite one to go to.
Same. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I saw the last show actually I saw before the pandemic. I saw Black Lips, and Warish opened for them, Riley Hawk's band. So
nice.
Yeah, it was
Riley Hawk, like Tony Hawk's son, the skater. Wow.
It was funny actually. So every chance I get when I go to a show, I try to talk to the artists if they're out there, like at the merch table or something like that. And I didn't know who Warish was. And I was like, that guy really, like, he looks familiar. Like, I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Regardless, I just went up and talked to him, and I was like, hey, great set. Cool. So I, bought a t-shirt and everything. It was like a year later I found out it was Riley Hawk. So, yeah.
Probably for the best,
It probably, yeah.
Without knowing anything.
Yeah. But anyway. Oh, and then there's, I think it was Kung Fu Bow Tie. Is that?
Kung Fu Necktie. Yeah, that's
Kung
right
Fu
down the street.
Necktie.
I live like a block from there.
Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. I saw Cheek Face there,
Okay.
and I don't know if you know Pouring Silver. They were like a really small, like it's kind of a conglomerate of like a lot of other Philly artists.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a little out of the loop though. After I just got back here last year after being gone I was in Nashville for 5 years, so I feel like I got pretty disconnected
Yeah.
with the scene. But maybe I know some people. I don't know.
Well, I was actually going to ask about that. What made you want to come back?
Well, a big part of it. Well, I guess it's really two things. Obviously, pandemic. We're in the house. We're in Nashville.
Mhm.
You know, without that town, without the musical or social aspect, I don't know. I don't really think that suburban feeling city really felt right, because we just kind of felt like we were in an island. We're landlocked. We're far from my family. And then the bigger thing, as far as the perspective, is, you know, Chiara moved here from Italy beginning of 2020, basically right into the pandemic. And so that was really jarring for her, going from, you know, the most beautiful cultural place in the world to Nashville, Tennessee, mid-pandemic in the South. You know, it's just jarring. And both of us were just like, why are we still here? It doesn't really serve any purpose. So my family's here. I'm from here. It's comfortable. It's a little bit more her speed. It's more my speed. I kind of miss the attitude. And so we just kind of went for it. It was very, impulsive. We just kind of like flipped the house, boom. Okay, next thing you know, a month we're moving, and here we are. And it's better.
Yeah.
I think now it's just kind of realizing that America as a whole is the issue. But Philly, I guess, is a step in the right direction, at least, because, yeah, there's comforts here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, having experienced the rest of the world, or, you know, at least Europe, more or less, do you feel tied to the country in terms of, like, you know, what you do as an artist, or do you feel more fluid, like you could be like, you know, Italy based or something like that at some point?
That's been really interesting over the last few years because of the American mindset. You know, the productivity. I have to become something. I have to work. I have to kill myself for my career and my job and my identity.
Yeah.
Every time I'd go over there, I would always have like a crisis at some point, because things are slower, priorities are straight, people live first and work third, maybe. From me going there, I just saw how messed up I am from like the American programming, I guess. And so I did always feel that way. I'm like, well, we got to get back. You know, I got to get to work. You know, that's where everything is. But I will tell you that the more I go back and come back, the more that just slowly wears off, because, you know, you land at JFK or Newark and you hear American people speaking English again, and the things that they're talking about, and just the anxiety in the air. Just like, why? What are any of us going through all of this for? It doesn't really pay off anymore. And especially with the way things are adapting online, and I'm starting to feel like it's time to maybe let go of trying to hang on to the whole American chase. You know, it's just kind of, I don't think it's serving anyone. And I really just don't think that there's any reward or sense to it anymore. So, yeah, that's part of the 5-year plan. Maybe just be done with this altogether.
Yeah.
But I feel like I gotta be in it now for the real job, which I guess is like being in it to try to fight it while I still have the energy.
Well, do you at least feel less affected by that, like, American anxiety and, you know, rush to be the best or whatever?
Oh God, no. I mean, super affected. Getting out only makes you more aware of it, I think.
Got it.
Whereas if you don't have anything to measure it up next to, you're just like, this is normal to feel like this 24/7. But it's not. And so, like, when you realize that, it almost makes you more aware of it. You're like, wow, I'm really messed up. This is not okay. Which is the beginning to feeling better and distancing yourself from it and overcoming it, is becoming aware of how negatively it affects you and what it is that's affecting you. But it's a process, I think. So I'm probably more anxious than ever at times. And, you know, that's a big part of this record that I'm working on now, is like addressing all of that. Like, what's the problem here?
Right.
A lot of this is not normal, and what can we do about it? And yeah, so hopefully can work through it. hopefully we can all work through it. And then by the time I'm immune to it again, I'll just completely get out of here. I don't know.
Hey, fair enough. Last thing here, as we talked about earlier, a defining quality of your music is that each release does stand completely on its own. I think, even someone who doesn't know your music super well, they can like hit shuffle on all your music and just say like, okay, that one's from Piecemeal, that one's from Stardust Birthday Party or whatever, and so on. So I think everyone's just really excited to see what else is in store,
Oh, man, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's hard to know anymore, just being isolated from people at times. But I think it's maybe easy for everybody to just be like, what's the point of doing anything anymore? It's like everyone is doing shit all the time. Social media, you go on and like everyone's living the dream, and there's so much room for comparison, all this stuff. So I appreciate that. I hope give it purpose.
Yeah. And just actually before we close out here, I know you've talked about social media before and how you just kind of, as much as possible, try to separate yourself from it. Has that, especially with people, being more independent, you talked about being more introverted, just kind of being locked up. Have you felt any pressure from it recently?
Yeah, the whole social media thing's been very difficult over the last, year and a half, because where it used to be, we got things going on. I can share, we're on tour, we're making a record, we're out into the world. There's things to share that are somewhat relevant, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But the last year and a half, it's kind of been this choice between be full of shit and show the world fake things, or show them how boring and uneventful your personal life is. And so it's kind of this choice, and that's been kind of stressful because I don't know. It's I guess just because that's the choice that you have to make. And so kind of where I'm at with it now is I do think it's good as an outlet, and I think the best way to use that outlet is to find a way to make fun of it while like being self-aware about using it. There is so much, people just kind of faking it online. And I think it's toxic for people because everybody sort of A/Bs it to their own life, which, 1% people are willing to show. Or, how many people go somewhere specifically that looks really nice to take a photo to make it look like their life is amazing, and then, put it out there. And it's harmful levels of bullshit, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of where I'm at now is like, the point is not to run from it and just not use it and disconnect, because honestly, it's the only way to really communicate with people now. So it's just kind of finding that happy medium between how can I like self-aware and kind of not seriously use this, but use the platform to kind of turn it in on itself. And that's kind of how I like to have fun with it in that way.
Cool.
But as long as it's just strictly output, it's the getting rid of the picking it up and you're just scrolling through stuff and you don't even care what you're looking at. And then 10 minutes passes. It's getting rid of that part of it. So
that's good. Cool. That's something I definitely, just from my perspective, have seen from at least your Instagram account. So I think, good job, I guess. So,
thank you.
All right. Last question here. And I just want to keep it a little more broad, tying it together. What is one thing you want people to know heading into, I guess, the eventual release of your new music this year?
That no one is alone in how fucked up they feel currently. I think that's kind of the purpose and intention of it, is not ignoring all of this stuff that's going on inside of all of us, reasonably so because of what's going on outside. And so, yeah, that's the main thing, I think.
Awesome. Ron Gallo has some exciting announcements coming up, so keep an eye out for those. And in the meantime, I guess drop a couple likes on his Google reviews and do your best to prepare yourself for the new music. Ron, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
All mine. Thank you.